need to do slideshow from beginning. Okay, please tell me you see a title card from PowerPoint.
You're good.
Okay. Thanks everybody for inviting Ben and I. Ben Tietze, you've already met. UVM grad, and I am not UVM grad, but both of us are current ITE members. As we work for the Agency of Transportation, that's a privilege that gets bestowed upon us. So we love ITE. We try to participate as much as we can. Ben's way deeper into ITE than I am, working on a New England and state level, but so we're really enthusiastic and glad that UVM was able to put together ITE chapter. So that's awesome. I will start off by apologizing in a couple of different ways. First of all, I've recently revamped this presentation. So if I stumble a little bit, you guys are my guinea pigs. So I'll upfront that. I will also apologize for the fact that this is the first presentation that Ben and I are doing in separate locations, so we may be stumbling over each other, so just bear with us on that. And last but not least, well, there was something else I was going to apologize for, but I guess I won't. I can't remember, so I guess that's a good thing. So yeah, I'm the project manager for this project. This has been in the works. It's been on VTRANS books for the better part of 12 years, 13 years. And we're finally seeing the fruits of our labor on this. I started on this project from day one. I was the initial designer. I worked my way up in through the project engineer role and then ultimately into the project manager role. When Ben got hired at the agency several years ago, 5 years ago, I think now, Ben?
5 years, yeah.
Yep. I immediately threw his butt right onto this project because I knew he's talented, and a complex project of this nature really needed somebody of Ben's caliber. So that's a little flattery for Ben. This is just some screenshots of what the Rotary Intersection used to look like. These were from the 1930s, 1940s. It really hasn't changed much over the last, better part of a century out there. Colloquially, it's called the Rotary, even though it is only a little tiny island, or I should say was a little tiny island. For whatever reason, that's what the locals called it, the Rotary. So yeah, nothing's really changed. We've had some landscaping, some residences and businesses have come and go. But other than that, the intersection's been the same and it's been in dire need of some help. Why does it need help? Here's a long list of reasons why it needs help. It's been on a high crash location for at least the last 25 years consecutively. I can't think of another intersection in all of Vermont that has been on our high crash location consecutively for this length of period of time. The Rotary, the little island, was just too small to actually create any sort of safety benefits to the to motorists. And we'll talk about non-motorists as well, but initially motorists up front, because the HCL is really about vehicular crashes. Too small, so it didn't really do its job, and really just was wide open out there, and so it really it didn't necessarily discourage people from slowing down, or it didn't really encourage people from slowing down. It probably probably encouraged people to speed, if anything. The left turn movements were really awkward because of the size of the location of the existing island, as well. And there's some uncontrolled drive accesses. The school and the church is nearby. Where all, these are just all different reasons for why this intersection lacked safe mobility. And aesthetically, it was just appealing, like kind of just a nasty old intersection, you know, and the city was looking to, you know, make changes and make it more welcoming, and they consider it a major gateway in the south end of town. So this all kind of rolled into the project. And then utilities and stormwater are two things that we're going to talk about in depth in this presentation. Ben, did I miss anything regarding identified issues? It's pretty lengthy here.
No, not really. So the vehicle volumes are between 18,000 and 20,000, more than that little rotary island was ever intended to accommodate. It's kind of a skewed five-way intersection, so it lends its own geometric problems. And just for context, Mike mentioned the high crash location list. VTRANS defines a high crash location as a location having 5 or more accidents over a 5-year period. It's a pretty low standard because we don't have a lot of volume in Vermont. But as you can see in the second and third bullet point, this was over 50 crashes in 5 years. So it's pretty high up on our list of places that need to be addressed.
So in 2003, the city reached out to the RPC, and you know, they really wanted to look for a solution here. They did some studying, and ultimately, long story short, they came up with the modern roundabout as the solution. Because we're in active construction now in Burlington, I don't have any pictures of the roundabout yet, but we will. So I provided some pictures of a roundabout we constructed a couple years back in Waterbury that's identical in size. So this kind of gives you an idea of what we're going to be constructing in Burlington. This is kind of a pretty looking plan of what it's going to look like. And to give you a little orientation, left to right is south to north, Shelburne Street to the left to the interstate, Shelburne Street to St. Paul and Union to the right. Down below on the right is South Willard to Champlain College. And then we have a bunch of other side streets that come into this location.
Hold on one second, Mike.
Yeah.
Go back one slide.
Yeah, I think.
So just for context, and it's hard to see. So here's the modern roundabout and, you know, the 5-way-ish intersection. There's a little black circle here. That's where that island used to live.
Right here.
So it was skewed from pretty much any direction. It wasn't in the middle. So part of what we're doing is shifting where the intersection actually is. All right, Mike, you're good.
Okay. Yep. Nope. Thanks for that. So what does the modern roundabout provide? You know, why is it a good solution at this location? It can easily handle the traffic that's out there. We looked at scenarios where the Champlain Parkway was constructed and where it was not constructed, and we looked at the volumes. The volumes have been decreasing out there for the better part of the last 5 to 10 years. We took the worst case scenario and we said, okay, let's assume the parkway is not constructed. So we came up with 19,200, give or take. And, you know, if anybody knows anything about roundabouts, they might have a sense as to know what the threshold is for, you know, when to move up to a dual lane roundabout. And that's typically 24, 25, 26,000 vehicles a day. So this intersection, this roundabout will handle that traffic at under 20. Huge crash reductions, huge reductions in severity of crashes. These are all paramount. These are just what roundabouts are known for. I won't get too deep into those. You know, the roundabout creates geometry that's very, I don't know a good word for it, but acceptable or favorable, I guess, to all users. Focuses the driver's line of sight and obscures certain perspectives to get drivers to focus on where they're at and slow down. Left turns become right turns. You know, and that's just a function of the circulatory roadway. We'll be able to control those adjacent drives that were wide open before. Crosswalks will be shorter. They'll be in more predictable locations, and there'll be more of them. the Central Island will give the city an opportunity to do something aesthetically pleasing as part of their gateway. While we're digging all this up, let's fix the utility issue out there. Let's clean everything up top to bottom. So we're going to this gives us an opportunity to do that. And then last but not least, let's also do the same for stormwater. Let's do something modern. Let's do something. There is no active stormwater treatment at that intersection. I believe some of the water is being collected in a combined stormwater sewer system. So let's try to clean it up. Let's detain it, treat it, and then discharge it. And then this is where this would probably be a good point for Ben to step in and talk a little bit about the traffic analysis piece of the modern roundabout.
So yeah, what you see on your right here is a screenshot from Rotary Intersection. It's a software we use. We use it specifically for roundabouts. It's used for most types of intersections. It can be applied to most. So there are a few different types of simulation tools we use at the agency. Some are what are called macro simulation tools. They kind of build off of the relationship of speed, flow, density curves. Something like Sidra is what we would call a micro simulation tool, and what it uses is driver behavior, lane changing parameters, and it kind of builds a vehicle by vehicle assessment of the intersection. So basically, this isn't of this roundabout, unfortunately. We're having some trouble with our files. But basically, you go in here, you model the size, all the geometrics of your roundabout, lane assignments, entry and exit angles, and then you'll apply your vehicle volumes, and there are some other behavioral adjustments you can make. When we look at a roundabout, we take into consideration something called gap acceptance. And so gap acceptance occurs at unsignalized intersections where you're talking about literally the gap in traffic that somebody needs to feel comfortable pulling into the traffic stream. So those are some things you can adjust to kind of model the behavior of your location. Those behaviors change, state to state, region to region. I'm sure if you're from out of state, you might deal with overly patient Vermont drivers as opposed to, say, New York drivers or New Jersey drivers. So those are all behavioral metrics that we can input in something like Sidra to help us come up with a reasonable design. So like Mike said, we perform this traffic analysis using about 19,000 vehicles per day. And our output showed, I think our maximum queue length on the northbound approach was going to be roughly 200 feet, or about 10 or 11 vehicles in the peak hour, so not too bad. And we would be able to handle it all in a single lane roundabout. We wouldn't need to add any additional lanes or create a hybrid roundabout. Yes?
And Ben, so I noticed in the southeast corner of this particular roundabout, there's, I think that's called a slipstream.
Slip lane, yep.
Okay, so what factors go into play for determining that that's necessary? I see it's only in one.
Gotcha. So something like this would probably be an indication of a high right turning volume. We had a roundabout down in Brattleboro. We converted from a 2-lane back to a 1-lane. And essentially, based on the right turning volume, you might decide that it's safer to have people take the slip lane and merge in the traffic stream further down than just make the right turn inside. So if you got a lot of right turners here, but say a lot of left turners here, this would kind of separate out the two streams.
Gotcha.
And there is I don't know if Mike has a screenshot of it, there's a federal guidance document, an NCHRP report, which covers the guidance for roundabout design, and they have things like volume thresholds to consider different things. So like a slip lane or 1 versus 2 lanes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, NCHRP 672. Yep. Okay. So with all that, just kind of building upon, another reason why we want the roundabout, and that is to drive home the point that we need to get vehicles to slow down. Speeds through here way too fast. Why do we need to get vehicles slow down? That's probably an obvious answer for everybody sitting in this room, but it isn't necessarily to the general public. So, we need to give drivers more time to react at an intersection, especially of this complexity. So, you create that time by getting them to slow down. They can see more other vehicles, turning vehicles, bikes and peds. So slow down, more time. But also the crash implications are also obvious. If slow vehicles collide, you get property damage only collisions, or that's what we call fender benders. And that's where the roundabouts really shine, is in the reduction of severity. In the case of Brattleboro, the Brattleboro roundabout that Ben was just talking about, when we built that roundabout as a dual lane roundabout in the late 90s, I think, it was a signalized intersection before then. And it was bumper cars out there with the signal. The roundabout, once it was constructed, didn't necessarily reduce the number of accidents, but believe it or not, it actually increased it slightly. But before the roundabout went in, we were putting people in the hospital left and right. And once the roundabout went in, there wasn't a single hospitalization as part of a collision that occurred at the roundabout. So that was just really testament to us that these things really they do work. So how do we slow vehicles down? Like I said before, we restricted drivers' field of vision. We want to keep them focused. And then we physically channelize them. We raise islands with granite curbing. Trying to get the two lanes northbound on Shelburne Street to merge into one beforehand, rather than the current situation where both lanes were entering the intersection. So these are just some ways we can slow folks down. So getting into the construction. So challenges to implementation, there are many on this project, and we'll kind of step you through some of them, hopefully without boring you too much. But first up, stormwater. Like I mentioned before, there was no existing treatment for stormwater on this site. There were multiple outlets. It was pretty much uncontrolled. So what did we need to do to try to fix that? Is we designed and built a permitted system that would gather, convey, and treat stormwater. And because a lot of the city's existing infrastructure downstream of this site was old, small, we really needed to figure out how we were going to slowly discharge into that system without inundating it and making problems worse downstream. So what did we do? Our design solution was to create a rather large stormwater treatment practice, among other practices, but this is kind of the central piece to the stormwater treatment on this project. The project, the photo that you see at the center of your screen is a picture that Ben just took, yesterday or today, Ben?
Yes.
Yep. So they're actively building this as we speak, and it's a rather large tank, not nearly as large as the one under South Prospect Street in front of UVM campus, Green, but this is a rather large one. It's the largest one I've ever been a part of. And this will detain, I don't know, Ben, what did we figure? Did we figure it was going to be 43,000 gallons? I don't know.
1,000 gallons before it hits overflow.
Yep. So it's a significant amount of water, but it should do the trick, and it should hopefully alleviate any sort of surcharging downstream of the existing system. Do you have anything to add to that, Ben?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. question.
Did you guys do the stormwater analysis for this?
We did,
yourselves?
yeah. So part of being a small agency in a small state is, my focus is traffic and traffic modeling, but as a project engineer, you do a little bit of everything. So the stormwater for this project was designed in-house using HydroCAD. So we can model, the system and then run an analysis through it, finding the hydraulic grade lines and everything through the system. And then we worked with state regulators and the city water department to make sure we were meeting all their needs. The unique challenge here was that this is a pretty steep hill, Locust Street, and about 200, 300 feet down is where our project terminates, and it enters Burlington's existing stormwater system, and their stormwater system is on the order of 100 years old. So this vault was specifically designed, if you look, it's got a small pipe at the bottom and a much larger pipe up top. So the idea is that for most storms, we're going to end up slowly discharging water into the existing system. And only on something like a 100-year storm are we going to hit this elevation where it's going to have that overflow. But yes, so sorry, a long-winded answer. It was all designed in-house at VTRANS.
Thank you.
So another challenge to this project is shallow ledge, and a lot of it. And we had taken many borings across the entire site, and we are still finding ledge that we didn't think was there. So we've noticed it. It comes up at the surface in many locations. So we knew it was there. In some places, we thought it was deeper than it really was. In the photo on your left, you can see we're digging, and I don't know if my cursor shows up for you guys or not, but to the left of that photo, you can see how shallow that ledge was that they were essentially chipping away, so that we can install a new sewer line in this particular location. So blasting is going to be the biggest and most efficient way of getting rid of all that rock, so that we can properly build our roadways and get our buried infrastructure in. And of course, that's a challenge. That comes with challenges. Close proximity to the houses and the businesses. There's gas station there nearby. So, it had a lot of challenges. We've taken all the precautions we possibly can. And I think the last time I checked in with our construction folks, I believe they said we were up to 70 blasts, which is pretty impressive. That's a lot of blasting. So here's a couple of videos that I hope show up of a couple of the blasts to give you a sense. And as you can see, they're not very energetic. They're not like what you would see in the movies, right? They're very small. They're very controlled. So we do it smartly and safely as best we can.
In all fairness, sorry, Mike, in all fairness, is this the video too? So what you see here are called blasting mats. And so basically it's a bunch of tires, but it's hundreds and hundreds of pounds. They'll move those with the excavator to get them in place. So it doesn't seem like a ton explosive, the explosive power, but it is quite a bit to launch those mats like that. When we did a blast along this road, there was a tree nearby that kind of did this. So we had the contractor go into all the homes and businesses in the area and conduct a pre-blast survey. So basically document the condition of all these homes, because, in Burlington, one home's 10 years old, the one next to it is, 150 years old. And that way we could monitor if there were any issues arising from all the blasting.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. That's exactly it. And just to end that conversation, I believe our geologist was telling us that this was some of the hardest rock at least in this side of North America. I don't know how they come to that conclusion, but that's what we were told. So it just added to the misery of the blasters. Another challenge we had was archaeology. We had it all on this project. Archaeology was unexpected. Archaeology early on, but later on, UVM had realized that there might have been something nearby after all. So we went back, took us another look. We did phase 1, phase 2 archaeological studies. We did find some residue, some residual chips or something that they felt were as a result of tool manufacturing from natives. Phase 3 ARC study, UVM came in and performed it, and this is what you see here in the picture during the very first weeks of construction. And they did some digging. They excavated a bunch of artifacts. They were telling us that they think that some of these artifacts could be nearly 3,000 years old, and that they could even tell that some of the tools may have been part of a trade route, if you will, between natives that lived here and those that lived further south down in the Rutland area, Brandon area, which was very interesting, very, very cool. Just to know that they could track that sort of migration. It's pretty interesting to us. So, if it couldn't get any worse, we had contaminated soil and groundwater on this project as well. At one point, there were 4 gas stations somewhere along this project location. Each of them had some level of leakage or contamination. There's only just the one gas station, the Rotary Mart that you see in the back of this picture here, that's still existing. The site that this picture is of what's called the old Rotary Golf site, and that was really probably the biggest offender. They had quite a bit of leakage out there, petroleum, and the DEC was actively working with the property owner to try to get it cleaned up. They tried unsuccessfully using like an air disparaging system, which I can't even explain to you what that is. But apparently that remediation had failed over the last several years. So DEC asked if they could piggyback onto our project and have our contractor do some of the excavation and try to get some of that dirty dirt out of the site while we were there. So we agreed to that. It complicated our project a little bit more, but I think all parties are kind of glad that this site will be clean when all is said and done. This is the same site. This is during cleanup. This happened in August, September of this last fall, and you can see we dug way down. We were down, what, Ben, probably 12 feet, 10, 12 feet, I think.
11.5 feet, yep.
11.5 feet. And it's hard to see in the picture, but if you were to look at the water, the standing water in the bottom of the pit, you can clearly see a sheen. There's definitely gas and oil in that water. So it was dirty dirt is what they like to call it. They dig the pit, excavate as much as they can out in the first photo. In the second photo, the middle photo, you see the actively sampling the soil. And they have to do that before they truck it off to get treated or disposed. In this case, most of it was disposed at a landfill. And in the third photo, the one on the right, you can see the contractor is lining their trucks with poly, essentially really thick plastic, because we wouldn't allow them to truck this wet soil 2.5 hours up to the landfill and have it drip out the back end. So we made them line their trucks with poly. Anything else on that, Ben, on contaminated soils and groundwater?
No, that covers it pretty well. This, we trucked out over 2,000 cubic yards of contaminated soil. And this is one of 3 different sites, different smaller sites within the project that all had petroleum contamination within them.
First, do you want me to wait till the end for?
Oh, no.
Q&A?
I'll go for it.
Were you able to like charge the past offenders who like created the damage? Like, is there any way to go back and be like, it's clear you created this damage 30 years ago and we
Yes.
just paid for cleanup?
It's a very good question, and we run into a lot with how we fund activities like this. So any petroleum contamination that was found within the right-of-way of the roadway ends up getting billed to the city itself. This is a federally funded project, being a safety improvement project. They funded it 100%, so it's all federal money. But the feds will not pay for something like petroleum remediation. So the city is on the hook for that. What's on this private parcel, the previous owner or I think it's the current owner, is on the hook for it. It should be in the deed, that kind of thing. And then Vermont has what's called the Petroleum Cleanup Fund. And so a lot of costs that the city and the private owner bear end up being reimbursable through that fund. So they bear a cost, but it's not the whole cost.
Right.
Yeah, that PCF is funded through taxes that are levied against all active gas stations. So it's essentially an insurance fund is essentially what it is. And then I believe they qualify for PCF reimbursement in certain situations and only after their insurance company will no longer cover them and after they pay, like, I think it's a $10,000 deductible. Utilities is a big big part of this project as well. So we took 6 years to identify what the utilities were under this intersection, who owned them, whether they were active, inactive. We did several different quality level of utility investigations. We did a B and E and a DB and an A. Quality level D investigation is just essentially looking at what the utility companies have on record. And then a quality level B and a quality level A are contained under what's called a SUE, a subsurface utility exploration. We performed that SUE back in 2015. We did it, well, initially we did it at night, but we did a ground penetrating radar. And then what we did was in areas where we thought the lines that showed up from the ground penetrating radar conflicted with some of our proposed infrastructure, we did what was called potholing or quality level A. We did this over 100 different places on the site. And what you see in the pictures here is that quality level A being performed. Essentially, they drill a hole till they find the utility. They vacuum out all the material. They take a picture, some documentation, and then they go and they backfill what they dug. And on the photo on the right, you can see that vac truck sucking out the material and then putting it back in after the fact. So that was a little bit of intensive work. It's labor intensive, but the information that's gleaned from it is extremely valuable. And our federal partners really encourage us to do this, and they are okay with us spending extra money doing this because a little ounce of prevention prevents it's that old saying. So they see it as an investment because we really didn't want to run into some major utility issues during active construction. What the SUE revealed was that there was about 7 miles, 37,000 linear feet of existing utilities under this intersection, which is just insane. And it's every single utility you can think of is under there. Some of it is new, some of it is super old. And there was no way we were going to construct this intersection without having to do a very robust plan for utility relocation. And that's what we did here. We opted to go with a concrete encased duct bank, which varies in different sizes and layouts. we ultimately built them a new water line. I heard this morning that they're just about done all the water line work. So that was very encouraging to see. They worked through the winter to get that done. And then the sewer lines are super old and they are all built of clay. So just our excavator rumbling over the roadway surface would probably be enough to shatter that clay pipe in place. So what we opted to do was have the city go through and slip line the sewer line. So they blow this essentially a balloon. It's kind of like what they do for heart attacks, arteries, where they do this little stents in angioplasty. They blow this balloon up, and then they cure it in place with this little robot that they send down on a wire with a UV ray, and the ultraviolet radiation cures the liner in place, and it up to, I think they said it could go up to like 1,000,000 psi. So the liner itself ultimately becomes infinitely more stronger than the clay pipe itself. So if we break the clay pipe, no harm. And then the only other thing really here, and this is what the contractor's dealing with constantly, is just trying to keep the existing utilities active while they're building the new infrastructure. That's been a challenge, but we knew it was going to be. So Ben, anything else on utilities?
Not really. The one thing I will say is that with the 100 potholes we did and all the utility exploration we did, we found at least 2 mystery sewer lines, a mystery telecom duct bank, a water line that is 8 feet below where we thought it was. So no matter how much you do, you can find these problems and address the ones you can. But on a project of this scale and complexity, you're not going to find them all. Yep.
2 questions. One, was this design and analysis done in-house? And 2, are these issues of not knowing where things are common on projects of this scale?
So the utility, the initial utility investigation was done in-house. The duct bank design you see here was contracted out to Stantec, who is an engineering consultant firm. So they ended up doing the layouts and the layouts of the duct banks. And then your second question, yes. Especially something like this. These utilities, city utilities that have been built up over 150 years, you'd like to have as-builts of, what was put in the ground, 100 years ago. But when we reach out to those utilities and say, hey, we need your plans for the water line in this area, and they give us some, field sketches that kind of, have an arrow on it, it almost seems like back of a napkin. It's here, it's 6 feet down, we think, sure. So you're bound to run into these. And you do have the occasional, say, like telecommunications company or gas company who isn't part of the city, who just goes in and puts their stuff in the right of way and doesn't really tell anybody where it is. We hit down here on Locust, right at the beginning of construction, we had a small explosion. An excavator hit what was an abandoned gas line, but hadn't been drained correctly. So even though it was abandoned and it was marked as abandoned, when they hit it, they sparked what gas was remaining in it and had a small fireball. So.
Does that impact the project in any way? In more in the sense do you have to pay a fine or do anything like that if you hit this thing and it blows up?
Not really. So the utilities exist in our right of way.
Okay.
So they'll when we're working around gas lines, the gas company will be on site in case there is an accident. That instance I just talked about, they weren't there because it was abandoned, supposedly. And then these duct banks, the utility companies themselves will come run all their lines through it. We just basically put in a big concrete tube with little plastic pipes in it. But the biggest effect is on schedule. We say we can get this done in a year and a half or 2 construction seasons. Then you start digging and there's ledge 2 feet below the road and a bunch of utilities you didn't know were there, and things just get out of hand.
I just can't read it from here. Can you tell me what like the green line, and purple line mean?
Yeah, so the green line is the, let's see, Burlington Telecom. Red is Burlington Electric. Purple is Fairpoint, who I think is now consolidated, right?
Yep.
Okay. This little green line here is an unknown utility, which I think ended up being fiber. So, yep. And anything you see kind of hashed out is existing that's either being abandoned in place or removed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there we go. These are.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. This gives you a better sense as to how messy it was out there.
Yeah,
And
so,
then,
This is the old one though, right? And then
so this is the new, so a lot of what we did, Mike, if you go back one slide, is essentially like all this here, we're kind of squeezing, not the yellow gas, but the rest, we're kind of squeezing into one little like 4x4 package and running up the side of the road.
Seems simpler.
Yeah, so that, you know, if you have to come back here in 100 years and redo the stormwater, it should be a little bit easier to work around.
Sweet.
so another challenge that we had was transportation management. We have to keep this intersection open to all users while we're constructing it. We can't just close it completely, not at 19,000 vehicles a day. So we needed to give some thought to how are we going to manage, you know, how vehicles, how pedestrians, how bicyclists get through. We knew because it's such a complex project that there was going to be a certain construction sequencing and phasing to this. And so there was going to be many lane shifts. There was going to be some temporary lane closures, temporary street closures. We were going to need to detour trucks. So these are all different things that we had to be mindful of, on top of trying to maintain constant access to the businesses and the residences, because most of the people here are residences, and they leave for work in the morning, they come home at night. So we need to keep these accesses open. We had the school, which at first was, we're in a groove now with them when doing drop-offs and pickups of students, but at first there was a little give and take. We had to keep sidewalks open. So the contractor needed to phase their work such that if they ever had to close a sidewalk, they had to provide an alternative access and whatnot. But then we have all this equipment, all this material, these crews, all in a relatively small space, if you think about it. So this isn't a long linear paving project over 20 miles where, you have a lot of space. This is, 600, 700, 800 feet to work with, and you have a lot going on. So it was something that we do it as a part of our normal operating procedure for all projects, but this project in particular needed more focus on transportation management. So we developed what's called a TMP, a transportation management plan. We looked at, what long-term closures would be required. Can traffic be detoured? If so, can the side streets handle it? Where are the detours, best to put? So we looked at all those different things, and it's all summarized in this TMP. And I guess I won't spend too much more time on that. So in addition to the TMP, we kind of laid out some prospective, construction phasing for the contractor if he chose to utilize it. And generally they did for the most part. And then what they are required to do is submit the ultimate traffic control plan that they are planning on using during construction for our review and approval. And what you see on screen here is an example of that. And it shows things like, where's the work area? Which sidewalks are closed? Is it one-way alternating traffic? Is the street closed? Things like that. And that's all documented in their TCP packages that they submit. Just because I'm getting short on time, I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. public outreach and education. So veggie gardens, duck banks, and curbing, oh my, we need a robust public outreach plan. And there's a lot, because there's so much going on in such a small space, and people are going to be directly affected by our work activities. As you can see in the second photo, you can see where we're constructing a duck bank, 10 feet, 15 feet from those people's porches. You know, and so we really needed to have a really robust plan to interact with these folks, not just the people that live and work there, but also the people that just commute through the intersection as well. So we hired a company to kind of take the lead on that. And they're a public information consultant. They're called WSP. We developed a public information plan that outlined all the different activities we plan to implement to engage the public. You know, they do things like what we're doing today. They set up and coordinate with folks that want us to come and speak to them. They also participate in our weekly construction meetings. They're the ones that post all the broad, you know, the warnings and updates, traffic updates. They're the frontline folks that receive all the complaints and the rare compliments that we might get. And they also developed and actively maintain our project website, and they produce printed material. They do things as simple as door hangers for folks that essentially say, hey, listen, we're going to shut your water off in the next 24 hours. So we needed somebody to do that. I couldn't do that. I'm too busy to do that. Ben's too busy to do that. So we had to hire that out. And it's money well spent, to be honest with you. Here's some examples of some of our outreach efforts that we did. I will tell you at the end of this presentation to go visit our project website if you haven't already. Sounds like you guys have had a little bit of information on this project already. We did some educational, we did an educational video, how to drive, navigate a roundabout in general, but we also did a project video as well. That's on our YouTube site. I think there's links to it on our webpage as well. And by the way, if you watch those, the voice you hear is Ben's. He's the one who did the lovely voiceover for those videos. So thank you, Ben, on that, because I did not want to do that.
Yeah. Mike, we got a question.
Do you guys have a similar video to show how to cycle the roundabout?
So pedestrians and cyclists are covered in here.
Okay.
Maybe not as robustly as we'd like, but they are covered. And we would like to produce, so if you see this is kind of the footprint of this roundabout, we do want to produce one that's kind of a generic multi-lane roundabout so people can understand how to drive those. There might be some coming in the future here. And Vermont still is a little slow on the uptake on, accepting roundabouts.
But we're making progress, right, Ben?
Slowly.
Yeah. So to conclude, really, we spent 16 years on this project, and it's a long time. Not all of our projects last this long. I know the public probably says, well, the state takes forever on all their projects, but we're getting better at that. But considering the complexity of this project, 16 years seemed about right on. Like I said before, utilities was like 6 years of that. So, there was a lot of planning that needed to go into a lot of these challenges that I spoke of today. So yeah, we went from 2007 to 2023, cradle to grave. We spent about $1.6 million on planning and designing and permitting it. We thought it was going to be somewhere around 7 million. We ultimately decided that the engineer's estimate would be about 7.9, and I'm pleased to say that the bid came in at 7.7. Short of 7.8. So we were really pleased with that educated guess. Although Ben did the estimate, so I won't say that.
I knew exactly what was gonna cost the whole time.
And then you add a little bit of money for some construction engineering and some contingency, and we come in at about $10.1 million. It's an expensive project, but it's a project that we felt, and the city felt, was worth investing in. Yeah, we'll see how close we come to that 10.1 when all is said and done. At this point, I'll leave the last few minutes open for questions. I have to bail out at 1. Ben will be around if you have questions that you don't need me to answer. Also, Ben is going to try to make a sales pitch to you. But yeah, if you have any questions, hit me up.
Cool.
I was just curious, we talked a lot about in transportation system scope and boundary and how you choose that. So what was your process in choosing where your boundary lines were?
So our favorite phrase is called scope creep. And that is, especially on state projects, a regular occurrence. So when this was scoped back by the RPC in 2007, they said it would cost us roughly $300,000, slapping a roundabout in, out, it's easy, it'll take a year. 16 years later and $10 million, we have a roundabout, 7 miles of utilities, brand new, like state-of-the-art stormwater system, and all the other bells and whistles you can imagine. So the way this project kind of evolved, I'll try to keep this brief, but so we had a roundabout, and so one of the stages of our project development is applying for a stormwater permit based on how large the roundabout is, or how large the project is. They gauge the amount of impervious surface, so pavements, sidewalks, things like that. And based on an increase to that impervious surface, there are certain treatment requirements you have to follow. So when we first designed the roundabout, we had enough impervious surface increase that we had to develop a stormwater treatment system. We had to work with the city to do that as well. They have their own requirements. Well, the stormwater treatment system goes underground. What's underground? 7 miles of utilities. So we want to put in this new stormwater system. Now all of a sudden we're impacting utilities. Now all of a sudden let's redo the utilities. At the same time, Burlington's infrastructure is aging, so the city came to us with, on the city side, a water line plan. They wanted to redo all the water lines through the city. They saw this as an opportunity to do it in this location. So that got tossed on top. So it's kind of this, you know, we start with a little roundabout, then we go to environmental and they say, hey, you need this system. And we go, okay, we'll design that system. And all of a sudden that system hits this and kind of dominoes from there. So I would love for it to just be a surface transportation project. The traffic analysis and design was arguably the easiest part of this project. And it's been the underground stuff that's been the real headache. Yeah, question?
Could you speak to the estimation and bidding process a little bit?
Sure. So we track all of our projects and we use software that will come up with, say, a unit price for each bid item. And so we can use that to gauge roughly what it should be. And then if we have to take in extraneous factors like the pavement goes up with the price of oil type thing, we can modify those bid factors a little bit. So we develop in-house this project estimate. We develop what's called a PS&E package. So that's the plans, the specifications that go with the plans, and then the estimate that goes with the whole package. That estimate we keep in-house. The bidders don't see that. So what we do is we put the project out to bid with this long list of bid items and their quantities. So the contractor will see, 1,000 tons of bituminous pavement and, 2,000 yards of trench excavation. And they'll decide what they price that at based on the volume. And then hopefully it comes out close to what we estimate it to be. We have a pretty good relationship with our contractors in Vermont, small state, small community. So prices are getting a little out of hand now. But when this went out to bid, it was still pretty spot on. And then, the contractor will put in their bid And the way we usually operate is we accept the lowest bidder on something like a federally funded project.
Gotcha.
I just have a quick question about like getting tractor trailers through. Do you use like mountable stuff, like surfaces to get them through it? I know my job, like we've used that before, so
Yeah,
I
let me
just
see.
curious.
Is my USB still plugged in? Can we do the presentation real quick?
Here, I can bring it up on my side.
And then you can just scroll. So, scroll back up.
What number?
I think E6. So, I'm sorry, are you talking during construction or
Just like,
in the design?
yeah, in the design.
So, what you see here, the black is the pavement. Any of the red spaces are raised but traversable. So we use a type of curbing that isn't a vertical face, it's chamfered on one edge. And so it's a 2-inch rise in any of these red areas. And so something like a tractor trailer in all but one movement will be able to traverse, and they might have their rear trailer wheels tracking over those aprons. The tricky one here is if you're coming up Locust and you want to make a right turn. We didn't have the room to do anything like a tracking apron here. And so what we've done in other situations and what other jurisdictions have done is we just basically post a sign that says, if you want to take a right, go like that. So, that works when it's just that one approach. It's not a truck route or anything. It's, a bus comes up there or big garbage truck, somebody takes a wrong turn. They can fully circle the roundabout to make that right. But in all the other movements, Route 7 is a truck route. So we have to make sure, and we use a program called Auto Turn, and we can basically drop a vehicle on here and kind of drive it through the intersection.
Did you have to realign any of the roads to get the roundabout?
Yes, not drastically. The main bulk of the roads all stayed the same, but at the ends, we basically swept in the end of Locust and South Willard so that they would intersect here as opposed to kind of like that. So there was some minor realignment, but nothing major.
Is the plan to have cyclists act as pedestrians and use the sidewalks, or are they encouraged to enter the roundabout?
In Vermont, they have their choice. So, share the road with cyclists. In the city of Burlington, cyclists are allowed to ride on the sidewalks. So shortly before and after each approach, you'll see these little black angle pieces.
Yeah.
And so what that is, it's a ramp from the bike lane up onto these, and it goes from a 5-foot sidewalk to an 8-foot shared use path. So they can take those ramps to exit traffic if they're not comfortable using the roundabout. And then technically when they hit the crosswalk, you should dismount, hit the flashing beacon, walk your bike across, and then get back on. But it's designed so they can do whatever they feel most comfortable with.
You said that it was like kind of a roundabout before, and it was like 18,000 something over its volume capacity.
Oh, no, sorry, the 18 to 20,000 is just the volume that Route 7 sees every day.
Gotcha.
Yep. It was just far past because this didn't actually act like a roundabout. So essentially it was a 4-way,
Yeah.
2-way stop controlled intersection. And you wouldn't have, in the peak hours, there weren't enough gaps to let out the side streets.
Okay.
So
And
that's really.
can you point to any, like, one thing in the project that led to like the biggest increase in volume? Like, was it just moving it? You guys moved it over a little bit, right?
Traffic volume?
Yeah.
Nothing in the project will change that. It was just where could we get the footprint to put in a full-size roundabout so that it could handle the existing.
Okay.
And we did project out a like 1% increase each year. And we do a 20-year design life. So we expect the volumes to increase, but well within what this can handle.
Yeah, I understand that. I was misunderstanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you, or did you get a lot of pushback from companies or people living around there, or was it mostly just like, oh yeah, this will improve our neighborhood?
It was mixed depending on which of these houses you stopped at. It was either, oh my God, I've seen so many people almost die there, thank you for doing this, or I've lived here 50 years and I've never seen a car accident, what are you doing?
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a mixed bag. With public outreach, it's truly a mixed bag.
Did you have to impede on anybody's like property to kind of get that like area that you need to put it back?
Yes, yep, so there were, we go through a process called condemnation, where we will use eminent domain essentially to acquire the land we need to build this. The biggest one in this would have been, this is Christ the King, it's an elementary school. Their property line, you can kind of see this black line that has a 90-degree corner right there. That was their parcel. So this part we did not take permanently, but this part right here where the stormwater vault is, we had to acquire that parcel. So we negotiated with them. We don't always have to go to court. We reached an agreement, offered them a certain amount of money, and they said, sure, take it. Some people are less excited about that, in which case we have to go through a very long court process to pay them a fair market rate for the amount of land we're taking.
Is that in the $10 million or is that?
Yes, yeah, the right-of-way fee was wrapped into that 1.6 in design. And if you invite us back ever, I can always show you the exit 16 roundabout, or exit 16 DDI. We've been litigating that project in the courts for about 7 years. So if you want a story on every way the public can affect a transportation project, I'd be happy to come back and tell you guys about that.
Cool.
But real quick, I know we're running out of time, so I'll make the pitch. We've got an opening in traffic design right now for entry level. We've got a few in construction. We've got one of a rotation program where you join the agency and rotate through traffic, structures, construction, environmental, all the different groups to kind of get a feel for what they do. And then at the end of that, you can kind of negotiate your way into one of the groups you really enjoyed. So there's some great opportunities at the agency for anyone who's interested. So that's my quick pitch. And you're all already part of ITE, so that's great. So I don't need to make that pitch. Yeah.
Where can we find information on that opportunity?
That is a great question. I'm sure if you Google state of Vermont jobs and then filter by, say, engineer, you'll get it. If you'd like, I think I have your contact information.
Yeah.
I can send links to those postings and if you can get them out to everybody.
Yeah, we can distribute that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we're hiring second semester seniors, so.
Actually, first semester seniors as well.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So you don't have to have your diploma in hand yet. You can still get hired.
You can apply now if you're going to graduate at the end of this year or in December.
And presumably, I don't know how it goes, but there's probably like internships and stuff like that.
Yes, yes. I always invite you to look for internships. Those are a bit more spotty. You never know which group they're gonna, you'll know when you apply, but I never know which group is hiring how many interns each year. But they're always internships.
Are you aware if your group is hiring for the summer?
I don't believe traffic design has a temp position open, right?
No.
No, not this year.
Okay.
Something that I think we need to do more of, but maybe next
We would like to fill our permanent slots first, I think.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge. We had 2 openings this year we're trying to fill. Good. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this, we have several other presentations we're happy to give.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Mike.
All right.
Can I make a recommendation for the next intersection?
Sure.
And right here on the corner of Prospect.
I'm
and-
pretty sure one